These protesters believe that saving American lives is not the actual point of drone missiles being used by our military.
Boxers like Martez right behind me here have their fights regulated by the New York State Athletic Commission and have blood tests and other sort of regulations to promote their fights. Although getting capital from the Germinator is a big incentive for some of these startups, Tony Kershaw tells me that mentorship can play an even bigger role for some of these companies. Christians like John say that people can find Jesus in one of their darkest times, and John can recollect that memory. For entrepreneurs to get seed funding from the Tech Garden, they have to pitch their startups to a panel of judges in an auditorium like this one right here.
The upstate New York coalition to ground the drones and end the wars have a reason and an agenda as to why they are on a 165-mile walk to voice their opinions.
It's education primarily. We're trying to get the word out to people, and we hope along the way people will see the signs and maybe begin to question, what is that? Maybe something is wrong. And this latest 22 dead in the destruction of the hospital, this sort of thing has been going on now for years and years.
These protesters believe that saving American lives is not the actual point of drone missiles being used by our military.
In other words, they're saying American lives are more important than people in other countries. If you check and see who we have invaded over the years, it's been people of color. It is a violation. It's a racist activity. It's tied into our racist violations here in this country.
Let's raise our voices with our young friends in Afghanistan and say enough.
Although drones are not manned by actual humans, these protesters still believe that these drones still take a toll on our troops.
So while they may not be killed by bullets, there's a real problem with the psyche of drone operators. And there's a lot of concern around that.
More countries are looking to follow the United States and its drone warfare. Ed Kinane believes that this is the wrong approach.
Strategically, drones are stupid. They lead to blowback. They lead to proliferation. Many other countries now seek to have drones, if only out of self-defense.
An innovative specialist for Center State CEO and has designed the Germinator competition in order to benefit Central New York.
And we wanted to design a competition that could still benefit our local economy, still provide startups with the opportunities and the funding that they need to grow, but then also require them to build that wealth here rather than other places like Boston, New York City, San Fran, and so on and so forth.
Sincere was a startup last year that won significant funding from the Tech Garden, but moved to New York City weeks after receiving the money. Kershaw wanted to make sure businesses stay here after they receive the capital.
They're products of our ecosystem, and so on a positive note, whenever companies do leave and they go to these larger markets and they're successful, they essentially are ambassadors for us in those places. We can't be in New York City. We're based here in Syracuse, right?
This is a really great competition for a startup that's really trying to grow and be built here.
Although getting capital from the Germinator is a big incentive for some of these startups, Tony Kershaw tells me that mentorship can play an even bigger role for some of these companies.
So for earlier stage startups, mentoring is probably more important than the money in the beginning. But regardless of
the stage of the company, mentorship is always important.
Others at the Tech Garden also say it's not just about the money.
It's one of those things that funding, frankly, is easy. I know a lot of people say it's hard to get, but what we talk about when we're talking about the sandbox itself, and I'll relate that to the Germinator, is that it's people, program, place, and it's in that order. It's not only the entrepreneurs themselves and making sure they have the right team, but it is the mentorship and coaching that they have along with it.
For NCC News, I'm Jihun Han. New York MMA fighters knew from day one that competing professionally would not happen. But that did not stop fighters like Kevin Carrier from ultimately competing and hoping for the legislative overturn.
Figured over time it would become legal, just like every other state. I just figured it was a matter of time.
Even though professional MMA is illegal, amateurs can still fight but do not have the same sort of regulated bodies that other states have.
Promotion sanctioning the bouts, and they're not really checking the blood work. And I've actually heard a story or two about people with diseases fighting and spreading their diseases because they weren't properly checked.
Boxers like Martez right behind me here have their fights regulated by the New York State Athletic Commission and have blood tests and other sort of regulations to promote their fights. However, New York MMA fighters don't get the same sort of regulations simply because professional MMA is not legal in the state of New York.
I say that's dumb. I say that's dumb. They used to say the same thing about boxing. Boxing saves lives. You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for boxing, I wouldn't have graduated high school. I wouldn't be the man I am today. To be honest, if it wasn't, I love fighting. So I am built by God to be a fighter.
Boxing has a lot more history and traction compared to MMA. Potter believes MMA is a safer sport.
You want to get more injuries, and boxing and kickboxing is just dangerous. I was going to go professional as MMA last year too. I trained in wrestling since high school.
For NCC News,
Oh, he's coming!
Syrian refugees could be coming to central New York, and that's our top story. Basketball will be hosting Wisconsin tonight. The undefeated Orange come into this week ranked 14th in the nation according to an AP poll. First time they have been ranked all year long. They have won the Battle for Atlantis tournament last week in the Bahamas. The Badgers, on the other hand, is unranked this season after finishing last year in the Final Four. Game time is at 7:15 tonight. City School District is accused of segregating students who are immigrants and refugees. A lawsuit has been filed against the school district for violating state education department guidelines. The immigrant students were separated from the general student population. An 18-year-old Kirsten Hatfield disappeared one night in 1997. Authorities arrested 56-year-old Anthony Joseph Palma, who used to be a neighbor of the girl. Investigators were able to match a blood sample taken from the windowsill of the girl's room. With Palma's DNA, he was charged with kidnapping and first-degree murder on Tuesday.